What's going on, everybody? Before we get on into this video, I just want to, highlight the tragedy that was Brad Scheifele passing away, Mark Scheifele's father. Mark Scheifele played through Game 6, really courageous, really brave of him. Can't imagine what he's going through right now. If you want to donate to the True North Foundation, like many others have in the, following day, $30,000 raised to the day of Brad's passing. Pretty impressive. Shout out to Dallas Stars fans, donating, $55 or, whatever they could do. It was really incredible. So thank you, everybody. Feel the need to donate. Link is down in the description below. Let's get on into this one. Well, everybody, the Jets season is over. In round 2, 6 games to the Dallas Stars as they move on with the overtime winner, and they will be headed to the Western Conference Finals once again to play the Edmonton Oilers. So the Jets not going any further. It was quite the year, lots to talk about, just so many accolades this year for the franchise and players individually. Of course, that quick start to the Jets season, the 15-1 start, really propelled them to success all the way through. They were able to rest a few guys, during the year and everything. They were able to not rush guys back from injury when they had that, so that was a really nice cushion and, really put the world on notice there because there was, a lot of talk about the Winnipeg Jets maybe not even making the playoffs this season. Most analysts and experts didn't have them making the playoffs, and they ended up winning the President's Trophy. First time in franchise history. It was pretty cool, to be a part of that ride. That was awesome. Really likable cast this year. I don't think there was anybody that didn't really pull their weight. Of course, there's always going to be those one or two players that, you feel shouldn't be in the lineup, like a Logan Stanley, like a Mason Appleton. Talk about them a little bit later on in this video. But for the most part, guys were having career years left and right. Scott Arniel in his first year as the head coach, he's a Jack Adams finalist, right? It was just a really cool year from this Winnipeg Jets. So many career highs. Connor Hellebuck having the year of all years for goaltenders in the regular season. We'll talk about the playoffs and everything in a moment here, but he's going to win the Vezina Trophy. He could win the Hart. He's a Hart finalist. Lots of firsts for this organization this year. It was a pretty impressive year. Hard not to be proud of these guys. We get to the playoffs, and, Jets started with some injuries. Of course, Gabe Vilardi didn't start the playoffs, neither did Nikolai Ehlers. Mark Scheifele got banged up in that first round of the playoffs, so did Josh Morrissey. And it was a really gritty effort to get through the Blues in that first round. It took, one of the craziest comebacks in NHL history to get, past the Blues. Scored 2 goals there, tying goal with, 1.6 seconds left on the clock, and then Adam Lowry finishing it off in double overtime. That was really gutty, and without, Josh Morrissey, that was really, really cool by the Winnipeg Jets, what they were able to do in that game. The Jets had some road woes, they could not get it done on the road against the St. Louis Blues. It felt like every time they were on the road, you were just waiting for them to implode on themselves. Did not win on the road, won all their games at the Canada Life Center at home, and, move on to the round 2 against the Dallas Stars, and that theme continued. The road ended up being their enemy. They didn't win a game on the road these entire playoffs, haven't won a game on the road since 2023 against the Vegas Golden Knights, right? So it's definitely a worry, definitely a coaching problem, and I think, maybe Arniel's inexperience as a head coach showed a little bit there. One thing that stuck out to me was the ice time that Mason Appleton was getting. He was playing, 2 to 3 more minutes a night consistently, as he did all regular season, than a Cole Perfetti or a Nick Ehlers because of the line matching. Scott Arniel trying to, staple that Lowry line over onto Mikko Rantanen to shut him down, and, that's all fine and everything, but when you're trying to counter your opponent's aggression and, just counteract their best player all the time, you're not really playing your game and you're not playing your best players. And when you consider that Mason Appleton's, one of the top guys getting out there every single night, that can't happen. And that's a big reason why the Jets were, kind of defending, trying to avoid disaster than create disaster for their opponent, right? So that was, one of my takeaways from the playoffs. I didn't like how much Mason Appleton got to play. I didn't like the underutilization of guys like Ehlers and Perfetti, who I thought were incredible these playoffs. Nick Ehlers might have been the best forward overall in the games that he played outside of, Mark Scheifele and at times Kyle Connor. I really do believe that this team could have gone farther. This was, definitely one of the better renditions of the Winnipeg Jets since relocation. This was one of the most fun years I've ever had watching these guys, maybe the most likable roster yet. And, I definitely believe that they could have gone farther, but they fall in 6 games in the second round to the Dallas Stars. Very good team. I'm sure they're going to give Edmonton quite the headache, and I'm sure they could end up being in the Cup final, maybe even win the Stanley Cup. Now, if we take a look to the offseason, not going to get too in-depth with stuff right now, but they do have some UFAs, RFAs to take care of, and some decisions to make here. Going to start with the unrestricted UFAs, notably Nikolai Ehlers right at the top. 29-year-old speed demon that can shoot, that can score, that can play make. He can do it all. He's a driver. He took over the Jets offense in that Dallas series. In my opinion, he was the best forward for the Jets in that series against Dallas. And, he showed his worth, and he deserves to get paid. He's going to get a long-term contract. Will it be with the Winnipeg Jets? I don't know. Right now, I'd probably lean, 60-40 to no, 60% being no. I think the Jets don't necessarily prioritize Nikolai Ehlers. I think they have other stuff that they need to prioritize. I really want Nick Ehlers back on this Jets team really, really bad. He's my favorite player on this Jets team. However, next season, you got to look ahead. They have Kyle Connor that needs an extension. He makes $7 million right now. He's probably going to make, 12 and a half possibly. And it's going to be for a long time, right? Do they want to lock themselves into the Nick Ehlers deal? We'll see what the Jets front office do, how they value Nick Ehlers. And, on the flip side, Mason Appleton is also a free agent, unrestricted free agent. Will he walk? I'm leaning towards yes, despite how many more minutes a night he gets to play over, players that are far more important than a Mason Appleton, like Cole Perfetti, like Nick Ehlers, list goes on. The puck dies on that guy's stick over and over and over again. Offense dies on that guy's stick. I don't want to see him back in a Jets uniform. I fear that he's going to get, around $4 million and in the 3 to 4 year range. I just hope it's not with the Winnipeg Jets. Apples can go make his money elsewhere, but the Jets just do not need to bring him back, considering they've already signed Alex Iafallo, Vlad Nemesnikov, Nino Niederreiter still under contract. They don't need another aging bottom 6 forward. Those are the 2 notables on the UFA side. If we move over to the RFA side, restricted free agents, 2 big ones, and that is Gabe Vilardi and Dylan Samberg. As far as I'm concerned, you can give Dylan Samberg a blank check for as long as he wants. I do not care. Sign him 8 years, $8 million, get it done. I don't know necessarily how much he'll fetch. Neil Pionk, getting the 6-year, $7 million deal kind of makes me think it'll be possibly somewhere in there for Samberg. I do think he'll be back. Gabe Vilardi, I'm interested in this one just because of all the injury trouble that he's had in his career. Do the Jets get kind of scared off by giving him a big number? I don't think really that they're freaked out by it, but I don't think they're going to give him $8.5 million. I think it's going to be more in the $7 million range, somewhere in there, maybe for a 5-year deal kind of thing. That's just my guess. I do think both of them will be back, but if one of them do want to leave, then the Jets have some problems on their hand. We've seen that happen with Pierre-Luc Dubois in the past, kind of thing with RFAs, Jacob Trouba. But I do feel that both these guys will be back in a Jets uniform. I don't think that the Jets will have too much of a problem signing these guys long term. The Jets' number one focus in the offseason will be to find a second line center and maybe some more scoring on the wing. Obviously, Nick Ehlers would be a great guy to bring back. That would fill that hole, obviously, in the second line there. We'll see what happens with that. But second line centerman, definitely the biggest piece to go get. They still have their first round pick that they did not trade away, which is really incredibly frustrating. I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. But they do still have that asset if they want to go get a second line center. Obviously, if you lose Nick Ehlers, the job becomes even more important to add. Yes, the Jets do have some prospects coming in here like Nikita Chibrikov, Brad Lambert, Kieran Walton, Kobe Barlow, but none of those guys are going to step into a role where they can score 60-plus points like Nick Ehlers, right? So if it's not Ehlers, the Jets are going to have to look to free agency, through trade, and I just don't think that you find a guy really like Nick Ehlers. I think that's your best bet, and if you're able to sign him, I would get it done. There are a lot of guys aging on this team, like 32-year-old Mark Scheifele, while still playing really good. He is getting up there. 32-year-old Adam Lowry, Dylan DeMello getting up there in age as well. The Jets need to get ready and kind of prepare to fill in these voids, as you know, eventually these guys are going to start falling off if they haven't already in some aspect. I don't think we've seen the Dylan DeMello that we've seen in prior years. Still very solid defenseman, but not of the caliber that we're used to seeing from him. Still a really good pairing, but maybe it's time to prepare and find that partner for Josh Morrissey. Maybe he's in-house with an Elias Salamonson, maybe he's not, right? So we'll see what the Jets do this offseason, but they're definitely not getting any younger. I didn't want to talk about it too much during the playoffs because the Jets were, obviously in the playoffs, there was bigger things to focus on, but it was very evident that the holes that the Jets didn't fill at the trade deadline really did hurt them. I'm talking about that bottom pairing left D, and, even in the forward core, they needed one or two more scorers, they just didn't have that oomph. And when the Jets had injuries, you saw it, they had to claw for every single thing. And their two adds this summer were Brandon Tanev and Luke Shen, right? And Luke Shen spent half of the playoffs up eating popcorn in the press box, while Brandon Tanev ran around falling over himself with no stick half the time, right? So, not great additions. We've talked about this already, but it felt like every single other team really making a playoff push made some meaningful moves. And did it pay off for, every single team? No. But you look at Toronto and the pieces they've added, with Brandon Carlo, that was a great add for them. They addressed a problem for their team and they filled it, and that has not been hurting them these playoffs, right? You go look at the Florida Panthers. They felt like they needed one more guy. They went out and they got Brad Marchand. Look, I know there's going to be a ton of people saying, hey, the Jets couldn't do it because there's no move clauses, and I hit you back with that's bullshit. There's about 30% of the league that has a no move clause. You can get around those. And, at the end of the day, I think the Jets really wanted Brock Nelson. They made that offer to get him. And, when Colorado scooped him up, the Jets just did not have a plan B. It's inexcusable from the front office in a year where, you're getting career years out of so many guys. We may never see some of these guys play as well as they did this season ever again. This may be their peak. And that's what freaks me out going forward about this team, because I don't know how you take a step forward in this offseason. I don't know how you can do that with the year you just had, but the Jets got a tall task in front of them, and they're going to have to do some stuff that they've really never done in the offseason before, and that is, just go out there and truly fill some holes, because, you can't go into next season with, losing Nikolai Ehlers, put Alex Iafallo on the second line with Vlad Nemesnikov and Cole Perfetti. That does not work, right? So we'll see what they decide to do. They do have assets. They do have prospects if they want to move them for players to help them right now. And so they have some options this offseason. We'll see what GM Kevin Cheveldayoff looks to do. But that's really all I got today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. What a year it has been. Thanks, everybody, for checking out the channel this year. If you subscribe this season, there will be no shortage of content coming your way, as, we got tons to talk about with the draft about a month away now, off-season, free agency, everything like that, and some, maybe off-brand stuff, some long-form content like I've done in the past. But, so it will be a pretty eventful off-season content-wise. But thank you everybody again. If you want to go to the description, donate to the True North Foundation, that will be there. Wishing the best for the Scheifele family. That's really all I got. Thank you guys so much for everything. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Go Jets, go. Bye-bye.